My son texted me, "Don't come to my wedding. My wife doesn't want to see you." I silently closed his bank accounts. The next day, the two of them showed up at my doorstep. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. I had spent 32 years building a life I was proud of. After my husband Robert died from a heart attack when our son Daniel was only 12, I worked 2 jobs, one as a bank manager during the day, another doing bookkeeping for small businesses at night, to ensure Daniel never felt the absence of his father in material ways. I saved every spare dollar, invested wisely, and by the time Daniel graduated from college with a degree in marketing, I had built a comfortable nest egg. We were close, or so I believed. He called me every Sunday, visited for holidays, and always said I was his best friend. Then he met Vanessa. At first I was thrilled. My son, 28, and finally serious about someone. When he brought her to dinner 6 months into their relationship, I noticed small things. The way she answered questions directed at Daniel. How she corrected him when he spoke about his childhood, insisting her version of events he'd shared with her was more accurate than his own memories. "Daniel, you told me your mom worked at a bank, not that she was a manager," she'd said, laughing lightly. "Let's be honest about things." I let it slide. New relationships have awkward moments, but the signs multiplied. Daniel stopped calling every Sunday. When he did call, Vanessa was always there, her voice in the background, commenting on our conversation. "Is that your mom again? Didn't you just talk to her?" I'd hear her say. His visits became less frequent. When I asked about Thanksgiving, he hesitated. "Vanessa thinks we should start our own traditions," he explained. "You understand, right, Mom?" I tried to understand. I really did. The engagement announcement came via text message. Not a phone call, not a visit. A text with a photo of Vanessa's hand sporting a diamond ring that must have cost 3 months of Daniel's salary. "We're engaged. Wedding in 3 months. Details to follow." 3 months. That was my first real alarm. "Why the rush?" I called immediately. Vanessa answered Daniel's phone. "Oh, hi, Margaret," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "Daniel's in the shower, but yes, we're so excited. It's going to be a small, intimate ceremony, just our closest people. I'd love to help with planning," I offered. "I've been saving for Daniel's wedding for years." There was a pause. "That's so generous, but we want to do this ourselves. It's important to us to be independent, you know. We're adults." The word adults stung, as if I'd been treating them like children. Over the next 2 months, I was systematically excluded. Guest list discussions happened without me. Venue selection, dress shopping with Vanessa's mother, cake tasting. All of it proceeded as if I didn't exist. When I asked Daniel directly, he became defensive. "Mom, you're being controlling. Vanessa and I need space to build our life." Controlling? I had asked to see the guest list. Then, 3 weeks before the wedding, my phone buzzed with a message from Daniel. My hands shook as I read it. "Don't come to my wedding. Vanessa doesn't want you there. She says you've been unsupportive and critical of her. I need to put my future wife first. Please respect our wishes." I read it 5 times. Each time, the words felt more impossible. Don't come to my wedding. My only child. The boy I'd raised alone, sacrificed everything for, was uninviting me to the most important day of his life because a woman he'd known for less than a year told him to. What had I done that was critical? When had I been unsupportive? I called. It went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I sent a text. "Daniel, please call me. We need to talk about this." No response. For 2 days, I barely slept. I replayed every interaction with Vanessa, searching for the moment I'd offended her. Had I asked too many questions? Offered too much advice? I came up with nothing. I'd been polite, welcoming, even generous. On the third day, sitting at my kitchen table with cold coffee and a stack of unopened mail, something shifted inside me. The hurt began to calcify into something harder. I picked up my phone and made a call to the bank where I still had connections. Within an hour, I'd closed the joint accounts I'd opened for Daniel when he turned 18. Accounts I'd funded, accounts that still had my name on them. $73,000. That's what I'd saved for his future. I transferred every cent back to my personal account. Then I waited. The silence after I closed the accounts was deafening. I sat in my living room that evening, the same room where Daniel had taken his first steps, where we'd celebrated his high school graduation, where he'd told me about getting his first job. The photographs on the mantel seemed to mock me now. Had I imagined our closeness? Had I been a fool? No. I knew my son. The Daniel who sent that cruel text wasn't the real Daniel. He was being manipulated, and I had been too polite, too accommodating, to see it clearly. I made myself tea and began to think systematically, the same way I'd approached problems during my banking career. What did I actually know? Vanessa had isolated Daniel from me over 8 months. She'd rushed him into an engagement. She'd convinced him to uninvite his own mother from his wedding. Why? The money. It always came back to money. I opened my laptop and began searching. Vanessa Chen, 26, worked as a social media consultant, which, as far as I could determine, meant she posted photos online and called it a career. Her Instagram was public. Designer bags, luxury vacations, restaurant meals that cost more than I spent on groceries in a week. How did a social media consultant afford any of that? I dug deeper. Her previous relationship, mentioned in older posts, had been with Marcus Hendrickson, a name I recognized from local news. He was a real estate developer, significantly older, who'd recently filed for bankruptcy after a messy divorce. The timeline was interesting. Vanessa had started dating Daniel exactly 2 weeks after Marcus's financial troubles became public. Coincidence? I didn't believe in those anymore. I pulled out the notebook I'd kept with financial documents related to Daniel. The joint accounts weren't the only financial connection we had. When Daniel had started his marketing job 3 years ago, I'd co-signed on his apartment lease because his credit was still building. I'd also co-signed on his car loan. And there was the college fund I'd set up when he was born. Technically, a trust with me as trustee until he turned 30, which wouldn't happen for another 2 years. If Vanessa thought she was marrying into money through Daniel, she was in for a disappointment. My son made a decent salary, but nothing extraordinary. The real assets were in my name or in trusts I controlled. Had she known about these accounts? Had Daniel told her? My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Mrs. Patterson? A woman's voice, professionally cool. This is Jessica Moreno from First National Bank. I'm calling about some unusual activity on accounts linked to your name. My stomach tightened. What kind of activity? Someone attempted to access the joint account ending in 4782 approximately 3 hours ago. The system flagged it as closed, but there were multiple login attempts with the correct password. I wanted to verify this wasn't you. It wasn't me. That account was closed this morning at my request. I see. The IP address for the login attempts traces to a location in downtown Seattle. Do you know anyone who would have had the login credentials? Downtown Seattle, where Vanessa lived. I believe I do, I said slowly. Can you note in your system that any attempts to access my accounts or any accounts with my name should be flagged immediately and reported to me? Absolutely, Mrs. Patterson. I'll make a note. Have you considered filing a police report? Not yet, but thank you for the warning. After I hung up, I sat very still. Vanessa had tried to access the account, not Daniel. The IP address confirmed that. She'd had his passwords, and she'd tried to get to the money within hours of the wedding text. This wasn't about love. This wasn't about Daniel building a life with a partner. This was about a woman who'd identified a target and was systematically working to cut him off from anyone who might interfere with her plans. Well, she'd picked the wrong mother to cross. I opened a new document on my laptop and began typing. At the top, I wrote, Project Protect Daniel. Underneath, I listed everything I knew, every connection, every asset. Then I started making calls. First to my attorney, Gerald Wu, who'd handled Robert's estate and had known our family for 20 years. Gerald, I need to talk to you about protecting assets and possibly updating some trust documents. Margaret, is everything all right? No, I said, but it will be. Can you see me tomorrow morning? I'll make time, 9 a.m.? Perfect. By the time I went to bed that night, I had the skeleton of a plan. I would protect what I'd built. I would protect my son, even if he currently hated me for it. And I would make absolutely certain that Vanessa Chen discovered that I was not some elderly woman who could be pushed aside. I had built a life from nothing once before. I could do it again. Gerald Wu's office smelled like old books and coffee, comforting in its familiarity. He listened without interrupting as I laid out everything: the sudden engagement, the wedding ban, Vanessa's attempt to access the closed accounts, my suspicions about her motives. When I finished, he leaned back in his leather chair. Margaret, what exactly do you want to accomplish here? I want to protect Daniel's inheritance. I want to make sure that if this marriage is what I think it is, a financial scheme, she can't touch what I've built for him. Gerald nodded slowly. We can absolutely do that. The trust you established for Daniel doesn't mature until he's 30, and you're the sole trustee. We can add language that makes it irrevocable and specifies that any inheritance is his separate property, not marital. Even if he's married, Vanessa would have no claim to it. Do it. There's something else you should consider, Gerald continued. If you're concerned about financial exploitation, you might want to hire a private investigator. I know someone discreet who specializes in background checks, financial histories. I hesitated. It felt invasive, like I was spying on my own son. But then I remembered the text message. Don't come to my wedding. Give me the name, I said. By that afternoon, investigator Rachel Torres was sitting in my living room with a laptop and a notepad. She was in her 40s, efficient, with kind eyes that had probably seen too much. I need to be honest with you, Mrs. Patterson, she said, after I explained the situation. Most of what I find in cases like these isn't pleasant. Are you prepared for that? I need to know the truth. All right, give me 3 days. She called me back in 2. Mrs. Patterson, can you come to my office? I'd rather show you this in person. The drive to her office felt like it took hours. When I arrived, Rachel had papers spread across her conference table like evidence at a crime scene. Sit down, she said gently. The first document was a credit report. Vanessa Chen's credit report. She has $47,000 in credit card debt, Rachel explained. Most of it accumulated in the last 18 months. The creditors have started collection proceedings. The next document was a court filing. She was evicted from her last apartment for non-payment of rent. That was 4 months before she met Daniel. Then came the photographs, printed from social media, dated and annotated. Notice the timeline here. She dated Marcus Hendrickson for 2 years. He bought her a car, paid for vacations, her rent. When his business collapsed and his wife filed for divorce, Vanessa's posts about him stopped immediately. 2 weeks later, first photo with Daniel. My hands felt cold. There's more, Rachel said quietly. She slid another document across the table. This is a loan application in Daniel's name, submitted 3 weeks ago to a private lending company for $50,000. It was denied because Daniel's income-to-debt ratio didn't qualify, but look at the contact information. I looked. The email address was Vanessa's. The phone number was hers. She tried to take out a loan in his name? Without his knowledge, most likely. The signature on the application doesn't match Daniel's signature on file at his bank. I cross-referenced. This is fraud, Mrs. Patterson. Clear, documentable fraud. The room seemed to tilt. My son was engaged to a woman who was actively committing crimes using his identity. What about the wedding? I asked. Why the rush? Rachel pulled up something on her laptop and turned it toward me. I found the venue contract. They're getting married at the Bellevue Botanical Garden. Nice place. But here's what's interesting. She told the venue coordinator that she needed to be married before the end of this month because of inheritance stipulations in Daniel's grandmother's will. His grandmother, my mother, died 15 years ago. There are no stipulations. Exactly. She's been lying to vendors, possibly to Daniel too. My guess, she needs the marriage certificate for something, access to his benefits at work maybe, or to legitimize her position before someone, like you, can intervene. I stared at the papers. Here it was. Proof. Not suspicion, not motherly paranoia. Criminal fraud, identity theft, a calculated campaign to exploit my son. Rachel, I need copies of everything, and I need you to document more if you can. Phone records, anything that shows the pattern. I'll have a complete report by tomorrow, but Mrs. Patterson, she paused. You need to tell Daniel. I've tried. He won't talk to me. Then you need to make him listen, because in 2 weeks he's going to marry someone who's already committed crimes in his name. If she gets that marriage certificate, the fraud gets exponentially more complicated. I left Rachel's office with a folder full of evidence and a decision crystallizing in my mind. Daniel wouldn't take my call, wouldn't read my texts. Fine. But he couldn't ignore a registered letter from an attorney. That evening, I sat down with Gerald and drafted a letter. It was formal, citing the evidence, explaining the legal implications, offering to meet with Daniel to discuss the situation. We sent it certified mail, requiring his signature. The next morning, my phone rang. Unknown number again. You have some nerve, Vanessa's voice was shaking with rage, sending legal threats to harass us before our wedding? So she'd intercepted the letter. Of course she had. The letter was for Daniel, I said calmly. Daniel doesn't want to talk to you. You're a bitter, controlling old woman who can't stand to see him happy. Then have him tell me that himself. Put him on the phone. He's not here. Where is he, Vanessa? None of your business, she was screaming now. Stay away from us. Stay away from our wedding, or I swear I'll get a restraining order. Based on what grounds? Sending factual information to my own son? She hung up. I sat there, phone in hand, and realized something important. I'd touched a nerve. Vanessa was panicking, which meant she knew her scheme was unraveling. Good. Let her panic. The war had officially begun. I didn't wait for Vanessa's next move. The morning after her threatening phone call, I executed the plan Gerald and I had refined. First, the trust documents were updated and filed. Daniel's inheritance was now locked in an irrevocable trust, untouchable by any spouse, protected until his 35th birthday with strict disbursement terms. Even if he married Vanessa, even if they stayed married for decades, she couldn't access a penny. Second, I removed myself as co-signer from Daniel's apartment lease. I called the landlord directly, explained that my financial responsibility for the lease needed to end, and paid a fee to be released from the agreement. The landlord was understanding. Apparently, Vanessa had been difficult about noise complaints from neighbors. Third, and this was harder, I contacted the car dealership and began proceedings to remove my name from Daniel's auto loan. This would require Daniel to refinance on his own or risk losing the vehicle. It was harsh, but necessary. I couldn't leave any financial thread that Vanessa could pull. Finally, I filed a fraud report with the police regarding the loan application submitted in Daniel's name. I brought Rachel's evidence, the signature analysis, everything. The officer who took my statement was sympathetic but realistic. "Ma'am, unless your son presses charges himself, this is going to be difficult to prosecute. He's an adult, and technically, if he gave her access to his personal information, he didn't know she was doing this." "Can you prove that?" I couldn't, not yet. But the report was filed. It was documented. A paper trail was growing. I was home, exhausted, drinking tea and reviewing my next steps when my doorbell rang at 8:30 in the evening. Through the window, I saw Daniel's car in my driveway. My heart leaped. Finally, he'd come to talk. I opened the door. Daniel stood there, but he wasn't alone. Vanessa was beside him, her hand gripping his arm like a handler with a dog. Her face was composed, but her eyes were cold fury. "We need to talk, Mom," Daniel said. His voice was stiff, rehearsed. "Of course. Come in." They entered my living room like invaders. Vanessa sat on my couch as if she owned it, while Daniel remained standing, uncomfortable. "You've crossed a line," Vanessa started immediately. "Filing false police reports? Trying to sabotage Daniel's finances? This is elder abuse, Margaret. We could sue you." I almost laughed. Elder abuse? I'm 62 and in perfect health, and the police report isn't false. You committed fraud. I did no such thing. Daniel gave me permission to handle his finances. "Did you, Daniel?" I looked at my son directly. "Did you give Vanessa permission to apply for a $50,000 loan in your name?" He blinked. "What loan?" Vanessa's hand tightened on his arm. "Honey, remember we talked about that loan for the wedding expenses?" "We never talked about any loan," Daniel interrupted, looking confused. "Vanessa, what is she talking about? Your mother is lying to break us up. She's been doing this from the beginning. She hates me because I'm taking you away from her." I walked to my desk, pulled out the folder Rachel had given me, and handed it to Daniel. "Read it. All of it. Then decide who's lying." He opened the folder. I watched his face as he read. Confusion, then shock, then something that looked like the beginning of doubt. Vanessa tried to take the folder from him, but he held it away. "This says you tried to access my bank accounts, that you applied for a loan using my information, that you have $47,000 in debt. Those are fabricated. She hired some investigator to make up lies." "The credit report is from the official bureau, Daniel," I said quietly. "The loan application has a signature, a forged signature. The bank records the unauthorized access attempts. This isn't fabricated. This is documented fact." Daniel looked between us, his face pale. "Vanessa, don't you dare doubt me." Vanessa stood up, her composure cracking. "After everything I've done for you, I've made you better, more independent. Your mother is a controlling narcissist who can't let go. She's trying to sabotage our wedding because she's jealous." Jealous? The word was absurd. "I'm trying to protect him from a con artist. You're trying to keep him as your emotional support animal because you're a lonely old woman." The cruelty of it landed like a slap. Daniel flinched. "Don't talk to my mother like that," he said, and for a moment I saw my real son again. But Vanessa wasn't finished. She turned to him, tears suddenly streaming down her face, tears that appeared too quickly, too conveniently. "Daniel, if you believe her over me, we're done. Right now. Choose. Her or me. Your pathetic, manipulative mother or the woman who loves you. Vanessa, that's not fair. Choose." The silence stretched. Daniel looked at the folder, at me, at Vanessa. I could see the war happening inside him, years of our bond against months of her manipulation. I need time to think, he finally said. No. Vanessa grabbed his arm. We're leaving, now. And if you ever want to see me again, you'll cut her out of your life completely. Permanently. She dragged him toward the door. He didn't resist, but he didn't look back either. He left the folder on my coffee table. The door slammed. Through the window, I watched them argue in the driveway. Vanessa gesticulating wildly, Daniel standing with his head down. Finally, they got in the car and left. I sat down slowly, my hands shaking. The confrontation had been brutal, and I didn't know if I'd won or lost. Daniel had seen the evidence, but he'd still left with her. Over the next 3 days, I heard nothing. No calls, no texts. I forced myself not to reach out, knowing that any contact from me would only give Vanessa ammunition. Instead, I rested. I went to my garden and tended the roses I'd planted when Daniel was born. I had lunch with my friend Patricia and told her everything. I slept, ate properly, tried to rebuild the emotional reserves that the confrontation had depleted. By the 3rd day, I felt steadier, clearer, and then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Daniel's phone, but it's Vanessa. He's decided he doesn't want any contact with you ever again. Stop harassing us, or I'll file for a restraining order and sue you for emotional distress. You're not invited to the wedding. You're not part of his life anymore. Accept it. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I saved it as evidence and went back to tending my roses. If Vanessa thought I was going to give up, she'd badly misunderstood who she was dealing with. 4 days after Vanessa's threatening text, an email appeared in my inbox. The subject line read, Olive Branch. I almost deleted it, but curiosity won out. Dear Margaret, I think we got off on the wrong foot. I've been under a lot of stress with wedding planning, and I may have overreacted to some things. Daniel has been very upset about the conflict between us, and it's affecting him deeply. As his mother, I'm sure you don't want to see him suffering. I'd like to propose a solution that works for everyone. If you're willing to contribute to the wedding, we've estimated that $30,000 would cover the remaining expenses. I think we can move past this unpleasantness. Daniel deserves to have his mother at his wedding, and I want that for him. I'm willing to put aside our differences if you are. I've also been thinking about your concerns regarding finances. What if we set up a pre-nuptial agreement? You could work with our attorney to draft something that protects Daniel's interests. I have nothing to hide and only want him to be happy. Let me know if you'd like to meet for coffee this week to discuss this, like adults. Best regards, Vanessa. I read it twice, then forwarded it to Gerald Wu with a single line. Thoughts? He called me within an hour. Margaret, this is a classic manipulation tactic. She's asking for $30,000, which is conveniently close to the amount she needs to pay off her debts, based on Rachel's report. The prenup offer is bait to make it seem legitimate. I assumed as much. The fact that she's reaching out means she's worried. Your actions are having an effect. Don't give her any money, don't meet with her, and don't respond to this email. I won't. But Vanessa wasn't done. 2 days later, a FedEx package arrived at my house. Inside was a thick folder and a handwritten note. Margaret, since you didn't respond to my email, I thought I should send you these. Daniel and I went to a financial planner, and we've created a comprehensive plan for our future. As you'll see, we don't actually need your money or your interference. Daniel has excellent earning potential, and together we're going to build a wonderful life. I'm also including information about the prenuptial agreement I mentioned. It's already drafted. All it needs is your approval and Daniel's signature. This protects him completely. Anything you leave him in inheritance stays separate. Our debts stay separate. Everything is fair. I'm trying to extend a hand here. For Daniel's sake, please take it. V. The financial plan was amateur hour, vague projections about Daniel's potential earnings, Estimates that assumed he'd be making six figures within 3 years, unlikely in his field, and absolutely no mention of Vanessa's $47,000 in existing debt. The prenup, however, was more interesting. I took it to Gerald. He read it carefully, then looked up at me. "This is garbage. It protects nothing. See here. It specifies that any inheritance received during the marriage becomes marital property after 1 year. And this clause about shared financial responsibilities would actually make Daniel liable for her debts if they're married longer than 2 years." So the opposite of what she claimed. Exactly. If Daniel signed this, she'd have legal claim to anything you left him, and he'd be on the hook for her financial disasters. This isn't a protective document. It's a trap. I felt the cold anger settling deeper into my bones. She was so confident she could fool me. Did she really think I was some naive old woman who wouldn't read the fine print? "Don't respond," Gerald advised again. "Let her wonder." I didn't respond. But I did something else. I called Patricia and asked her to lunch. Patricia had been my friend for 20 years since our book club days. She was a retired family therapist, and she'd watched Daniel grow up. Over salads at our favorite cafe, I told her everything. "Oh, Margaret," she said when I finished. "I'm so sorry. This must be agony." "The worst part is feeling helpless. He won't talk to me. He's chosen her." "Has he, though? Really?" Patricia leaned forward. "From what you've described, he looked doubtful when he saw that evidence. He said he needed time to think. That doesn't sound like someone who's fully committed to her narrative. But he left with her because she gave him an ultimatum in a moment of high emotion. That's classic abuser behavior, Margaret. She's isolating him, controlling information, making him choose in crisis moments. But doubt is like a seed. Once it's planted, it grows. So what do I do? Exactly what you're doing. Stay calm, stay consistent, don't give her ammunition, document everything, and have faith that your son is smarter than she thinks he is." Patricia reached across the table and took my hand. "You're not alone in this. You have people who care about you, who see what's happening. Don't let her make you feel isolated, because that's what she's trying to do to both of you." I squeezed her hand, feeling some of the tension release from my shoulders. That night, I called my cousin, Linda, in Boston. She'd been through something similar with her daughter years ago, a controlling boyfriend who'd tried to cut the family off. Linda had eventually gotten through to her daughter, but it had taken time. "The hardest part is the waiting," Linda told me. "You want to fix it now, protect them now. But sometimes the only thing that works is letting them see the truth for themselves while you stay steady. Be the constant. Be the safe place they can come back to when it all falls apart. What if it doesn't fall apart in time? What if they actually get married? Then you deal with that when it happens. But Margaret, from everything you've told me, this woman is impatient. She's pushy. People like that make mistakes because they can't wait. They push too hard, and that's when the mask slips." Over the next week, I built my support system. I had coffee with Patricia twice more. I video called Linda. I went to my church's Wednesday evening service and talked with Pastor Mike, who'd known Daniel since confirmation class. Each conversation strengthened me, reminded me that I wasn't crazy, wasn't wrong to fight for my son. And crucially, each person agreed. Stay calm, stay the course, document everything, and wait for Vanessa to overplay her hand. Because manipulators always did, eventually. The wedding was now 10 days away. I had no invitation, no role, no acknowledgement. But I had something else. Patience, resources, and a community of people who had my back. I could wait. Vanessa, I suspected, could not. The doorbell rang at 7 a.m. on Saturday, 1 week before the wedding. I was still in my bathrobe, coffee mug in hand, when I opened the door to find Daniel and Vanessa on my porch. For a moment, hope flared. Daniel looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes. But he was here. "Mom," he said quietly, "can we come in?" Of course. They entered, and I noticed immediately how Vanessa positioned herself. Between Daniel and me, her hand on his back, steering him to the couch. She was wearing an expensive-looking dress, full makeup, hair perfect. She looked like she was going to a business meeting, not a reconciliation. Daniel sat. Vanessa remained standing, her posture radiating false warmth. "Margaret, we've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, her voice honeyed. "Daniel has been absolutely torn up about this conflict. He loves you so much, and this estrangement is breaking his heart." I looked at Daniel. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I've realized," Vanessa continued, "that I've been part of the problem. I was defensive, I overreacted, and I didn't give you a fair chance. You're his mother. You'll always be important to him." This was a script. I could hear it in the careful cadence of her words. "So we've come here to make peace," she smiled, and it was like watching a shark bare its teeth. "We want you at the wedding, Margaret. We want to be a family." "That's wonderful," I said carefully. "I'd like nothing more. But we need to clear the air about a few things." Vanessa pulled a folder from her designer bag. "These accusations you've made, the fraud claims, the investigation, all of it, it's caused real damage. Daniel's credit score has been affected. His relationship with his colleagues at work has been strained because of the stress. We've had to hire an attorney to defend against your police report." "Vanessa didn't do anything wrong, Mom," Daniel said, finally speaking. His voice was hollow. "There were some misunderstandings about the loan application, but it was all just paperwork confusion." "Paperwork confusion?" I repeated. "Daniel, her signature was forged." "The bank made an error," Vanessa interjected smoothly. "Our attorney has documentation proving it, but that's not why we're here. We're here because we want to move forward, not dwell in the past." She sat down next to Daniel, taking his hand. "Here's what we're proposing. You drop the police report, stop the investigation, and issue a written apology for the distress this has caused. In exchange, we'll invite you to the wedding. Front row, mother of the groom, the whole thing. We'll do family photos. You can give a speech if you want. Everything you've been hoping for." I stared at her. "You want me to apologize? We want to heal this family," Vanessa said, but her eyes were calculating. "And healing requires accountability. You made serious accusations without proof. You tried to sabotage our relationship. An apology is the least you can do." "And if I don't apologize?" The warmth vanished from Vanessa's face like someone had flipped a switch. "Then you'll never see Daniel again. We'll move forward without you. We'll build our life, have our children, create our family, and you will not be part of any of it." "Vanessa," Daniel started, but she squeezed his hand hard enough that I saw him wince. "No, Daniel. Your mother needs to understand consequences. She can't treat us like this and expect everything to be fine." I turned to my son. "Daniel, look at me." He did, reluctantly. "Do you believe I made false accusations? Do you truly believe I would lie about something this serious?" He opened his mouth, closed it. I don't know what to believe anymore." "Yes, you do. Look at the evidence I gave you. Really look at it. The credit report, the loan application, the timeline of Vanessa's previous relationship, it's all there." "I've explained all of that." Vanessa stood up, her voice rising. "You're trying to poison him against me again. This is exactly why we can't trust you." "I'm trying to protect him. From what? From happiness, from love, from having a life that doesn't revolve around you?" She was yelling now, all pretense of reconciliation gone. "You're a bitter, lonely old woman who can't stand that your son chose someone else. I can stand him choosing someone else, I said, keeping my voice level. I can't stand him being exploited by a con artist. How dare you? Vanessa turned to Daniel. Are you going to let her talk to me like this? Are you going to defend your future wife? Or are you going to sit there like a coward? Daniel stood up, his face flushed. Mom, you need to apologize, now. If you can't do that, we're leaving. I'm not apologizing for telling the truth. Then you're choosing this, Vanessa said, grabbing her bag. You're choosing your pride over your relationship with your son. I hope it's worth it. She headed for the door. Daniel followed, but at the threshold he turned back. For just a second, I saw something in his eyes. Uncertainty. Maybe even fear. But then Vanessa called his name sharply, and he left. The door closed. I stood in my living room, my coffee long cold, and felt my hands shaking. That hadn't been a reconciliation attempt. It had been a hostage negotiation. Drop your weapons, surrender your position, or you'll never see your son again. And I'd refused. Was I wrong? Should I have just apologized? Swallowed my pride? Stayed in Daniel's life even if it meant watching Vanessa destroy him financially? No. No, because an apology would have legitimized her narrative. It would have made me the villain in Daniel's mind permanently. And more than that, it would have signaled to Vanessa that I could be manipulated, controlled, forced to back down. I wouldn't give her that power. But God, it hurt. The fear was creeping in now. What if I'd just lost my son forever? What if he married her? And I never got him back. I sat down heavily on the couch and let myself cry for the first time since this nightmare had begun. I cried for the little boy who'd held my hand crossing streets, for the teenager who'd called me after his first heartbreak, for the man who'd once told me I was his hero. I cried for about 10 minutes. Then I wiped my eyes, straightened my back, and called Gerald. They just tried to extort me, I told him. I need to document this, every word. Tell me everything, he said. As I recounted the conversation, writing it down in detail while it was fresh, I felt the fear transforming into something else, something harder and sharper. Vanessa had shown me her hand. She was getting desperate. Desperate people made mistakes. And when she made hers, I would be ready. The wedding was scheduled for 3 p.m. on Sunday at the Bellevue Botanical Garden. I didn't plan to attend, I wasn't invited, and I wasn't going to cause a scene that would only hurt Daniel more. But I did plan something else. Saturday afternoon, the day before the wedding, I received a call from Rachel Torres. Mrs. Patterson, you need to see this. I'm emailing it now. I opened my laptop and found her message. Attached were bank statements, Daniel's bank statements from the past 3 weeks. How did you get these? I asked, though I suspected I knew. Daniel requested them himself. He emailed them to me this morning and asked me to review them. I think he's starting to have doubts, but he needs confirmation. I scanned the documents. There were withdrawals I didn't recognize, transfers to accounts I didn't know, and then I saw it. A transfer of $8,000 to an account labeled VC Personal. Vanessa Chen Personal. Rachel, what am I looking at? Daniel has been paying her debts. See these transfers. They correlate exactly with payment due dates on her credit card accounts. He doesn't know it, but she's been using his money to stay afloat while maintaining her luxury lifestyle. The $8,000 was 3 days ago, right after you refused to apologize. My stomach tightened. Has Daniel seen this? Not yet. He asked me to compile everything and present it in a clear format. I think he's afraid of what he'll find, but he's ready to know the truth. I'm meeting him tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., at the downtown coffee shop on 5th Avenue. Tomorrow morning? The day of his wedding? He specifically requested it then. Mrs. Patterson, I think your son is looking for a reason not to go through with this. After we hung up, I sat very still. Daniel was meeting with the investigator on his wedding day. That meant something. That meant the doubt Patricia had talked about was growing, consuming him. But would it be enough? Or would Vanessa talk him back into it? I made a decision. Sunday morning, I woke at 6 a.m., dressed carefully in a navy suit, and drove to downtown Seattle. The coffee shop where Daniel was meeting Rachel was on a corner with large windows. I could see him arrive at 9:50, looking like he hadn't slept. Rachel arrived at 10 precisely, carrying a folder. I didn't go in. I waited in my car across the street watching. They sat at a table by the window. I could see Rachel opening the folder, pointing to documents. I could see Daniel's face as he read, his expression moving from confusion to shock to something that looked like devastation. He put his head in his hands. They talked for 40 minutes. At one point, Daniel pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, showed it to Rachel. She nodded grimly. Then at 10:40, Daniel's phone rang. Even from across the street, I could see him tense. He answered, listened, and his face went pale. He stood up abruptly, said something to Rachel, and rushed out of the coffee shop. I started my car and followed him, keeping my distance. He drove to his apartment building. I parked a block away and watched as he ran inside. 10 minutes later, he emerged carrying 2 large suitcases and a backpack. His hands were shaking so badly he dropped one of the suitcases on the sidewalk. My phone buzzed, a text from Rachel. Vanessa just called him screaming about money. He's figured it out. Stay close. Daniel loaded the bags into his car and drove off. I followed carefully, my heart pounding. He didn't go toward the Bellevue Botanical Garden. He drove toward my neighborhood. When he pulled into my driveway, I was still 2 blocks away. By the time I arrived, he was sitting on my front porch steps, his head in his hands, surrounded by his suitcases. I parked and approached slowly. He looked up, and his face was streaked with tears. "Mom!" his voice broke. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I sat down beside him on the steps. "Tell me what happened." I asked Rachel to look at my bank statements because things weren't adding up. Vanessa kept saying we didn't have money for things, but I make a decent salary and I haven't been spending much. Rachel showed me everything this morning. Vanessa's been transferring money from my account for months, thousands of dollars, paying off her debts, buying things, all of it behind my back. He wiped his eyes. Then, while I was still at the coffee shop, she called me, screaming, saying the wedding planner was demanding $8,000 immediately or they'd cancel everything. She needed me to make a transfer right now, and I realized she doesn't love me. She never did. This whole thing was about money. Daniel, I went to the apartment to get my things and I found her laptop open. She was on a phone call with someone, and I heard her say, "Just get him to the altar, we can clean out his accounts after the honeymoon." Mom, she was talking about me like I was a mark. I put my arm around him as he sobbed. "I canceled the wedding," he said. "I called the venue, told them it's off. Vanessa doesn't know yet. She's at the Botanical Garden probably, getting ready, and she has no idea." "Where is she now?" "I don't know. I blocked her number, grabbed my stuff, and left." "Mom, you tried to tell me. You tried to show me, and I didn't listen. I chose her over you, and she was using me the whole time." "You were manipulated, Daniel. She's very good at it." "I told you not to come to my wedding. I said terrible things." "Stop." I turned him to face me. "You were being controlled by someone who knew exactly how to exploit your good nature. You're not the villain here. She is." My phone buzzed, then buzzed again, then started ringing. "Unknown number," I answered, putting it on speaker. "Where is he?" Vanessa's voice was pure fury. "Where is Daniel? He's not answering his phone. The wedding starts in 4 hours." "Daniel is safe," I said calmly. You did this! You poisoned him against me! I'm calling the police! This is harassment! This is over, Vanessa. Daniel knows everything. The debt, the transfers, the loan fraud, all of it. It's finished." There was a pause. Then her voice changed, became pleading. "Put him on the phone. Please. I can explain everything." It's all a misunderstanding. No, Daniel took my phone. It's not a misunderstanding. I heard you, Vanessa. Clean out his accounts after the honeymoon. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Baby, that wasn't. I was talking about something else. Stop lying. His voice was strong now, angry. I've seen the bank statements. I've seen the credit reports. I know about Marcus, about the eviction, about everything. My mother was right about you from the beginning. If you don't show up to this wedding, you'll regret it. I'll sue you for breach of promise. I'll ruin your reputation. I'll... Try it, I said, taking the phone back. We have documentation of fraud, identity theft, and financial exploitation. You try to sue, and we'll bury you in criminal charges. She was screaming now, incoherent, and then the line went dead. Daniel and I sat on the porch steps in silence for a moment. What do I do now? He asked quietly. Now? You come inside, we have tea, and you figure out your next chapter. But not today. Today, you just breathe. He nodded, standing up slowly. As we gathered his suitcases, my phone buzzed one more time. A text from an unknown number, probably Vanessa from a different phone. This isn't over. I deleted it and helped my son bring his bags inside. Actually, I thought, it was very much over. The week following the canceled wedding was controlled chaos. Daniel stayed with me, sleeping in his old bedroom, slowly healing. Vanessa tried calling 17 times from different numbers. We blocked each one. She sent emails ranging from pleading to threatening. Gerald advised saving everything, responding to nothing. On Tuesday, she appeared on my lawn screaming that Daniel had stolen her belongings. I called the police. The officer informed her she was trespassing and needed to leave immediately or face arrest. She left threatening lawsuits. On Wednesday, Daniel and I went to the police station and formally expanded the fraud report. With Daniel's cooperation, the case became strong. Detective Sarah Chen listened with increasing disgust. This is classic financial abuse, identity theft, wire fraud, financial exploitation. This is serious. Thursday, Gerald filed a civil lawsuit on Daniel's behalf for the $32,000 Vanessa had stolen. We attached bank records, police reports, Rachel's investigation, everything. It wasn't about recovering money. It was about establishing Daniel as the victim and protecting him. Friday, Vanessa's cheap attorney sent a demand letter. Gerald's surgical response outlined the criminal investigation, civil lawsuit, and documented fraud. He CC'd the detective and DA's office. We never heard from them again. 2 weeks later, Detective Chen called. We've filed charges. Vanessa Chen was arrested this morning. A restraining order was issued. She couldn't contact us. If she violated it, immediate jail. The trial came 6 months later. Daniel testified with quiet dignity about the manipulation, isolation, financial abuse. The prosecutor presented overwhelming evidence. Vanessa's defense, claiming Daniel gave permission for everything, was pathetic. The jury deliberated 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing: 4 years prison, 3 years probation, restitution of $32,000, permanent restraining order. I watched her face as the sentence was read. She'd aged. No designer clothes, no perfect makeup, just a woman in an ill-fitting suit facing consequences. She looked at Daniel one last time as they led her away. He didn't look back. Outside the courthouse, Daniel exhaled. It's really over. It's really over, I confirmed. And then life began again. 2 months after the trial, Daniel met Rachel, a teacher with a warm smile who brought me flowers at our first dinner and asked genuine questions about our lives. She was kind, independent, had her own life and friends. This was what healthy love looked like. 6 months later, he proposed at Washington Park Arboretum, a place with no bad memories. Their wedding was small and beautiful in my backyard under Robert's oak tree. When Daniel's vows included, I promise to always listen to the people who love me, to never mistake control for care. I cried happy tears. My life transformed too. I started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping financial abuse survivors. Patricia and I created a support group for parents whose children were in manipulative relationships. I joined a gardening club, took painting classes, traveled. My life expanded into something rich and fulfilling. 1 year after the canceled wedding, Daniel and Rachel had baby Margaret Rose. Holding my granddaughter, Daniel said, "I want her to know her grandmother. You taught me what unconditional love looks like." Meanwhile, Vanessa served 2.5 years before parole. She moved back with her elderly, struggling parents. She worked retail, wages garnished for unpayable restitution. Her social media stayed dark, her luxury lifestyle exposed as fraud, her contacts gone. She tried rebuilding her image once, posting about lessons learned. The comments were brutal. People had long memories and no sympathy for convicted fraudsters. Last I heard, she'd fled to the Midwest, escaping her reputation. I didn't follow up. She wasn't my concern anymore. My concern was Sunday dinners with Daniel, Rachel, and baby Margaret. My concern was my garden, the women I helped, the life I'd reclaimed. Vanessa had gambled everything on manipulation and lost it all: freedom, reputation, future. We had won everything: family, peace, justice, love. Daniel was safe, healing, building the life he deserved with someone who truly loved him. I had my son back, a daughter-in-law I adored, and a granddaughter who'd grow up knowing what real love looked like. Justice hadn't just been served. It had been earned, fought for, and celebrated. And standing in my garden, watching Daniel push Margaret in her stroller while Rachel laughed at something he said, I felt complete peace. We had won, completely, finally, forever. Looking back now, I understand that the hardest battles we fight are often for the people we love most. I could have given up when Daniel pushed me away. I could have accepted the easy path, apologizing, staying silent, pretending everything was fine. But real love isn't convenient. It's standing firm when someone you love is being destroyed, even if they hate you for it. Trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, it usually is. Don't ignore red flags because you want to be polite or accepting. Manipulation thrives in silence and accommodation. Document everything. Truth is your strongest weapon, but only if you can prove it. Most importantly, never underestimate a mother's determination to protect her child, no matter how old that child becomes. So I ask you, what would you have done? Would you have fought, or would you have stepped back? Have you faced something similar in your own family? Share your story in the comments. Subscribe to hear more about navigating family challenges. And remember, you're stronger than you think. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to give up. Thank you for listening to my story. My son texted me, "Don't